to Around the Old Town. I'm Bob Toomey. With me today is Christy Coombs. Christy, thanks for coming in.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me again.
Anytime again. Well, at least it's always positive when we have you on. One of the events we're going to talk about is the September 9th road race and September 11th, the National Day of Service and Remembrance.
Right.
Would you please lead in and tell us what's happening?
I sure will. We'll start off with the National Day of Service and Remembrance. 2 years ago, the President signed legislation designating 9/11 as a National Day of Service and Remembrance. The purpose of that is to get people to recognize September 11th in a positive way. We've had people say that they want it to become a national holiday, and we've encouraged against that because we don't want it to become just another day where people have the day off and have mattress sales and car sales and that kind of thing. We want people to go out and do service in remembrance of those who died, kind of reflecting what happened after September 11th when the country came together so well and worked together and supported the families who lost somebody on September 11th, supported the rescue workers in New York. And the country really came together in a bond, and we want to see that happen again. So in recognizing 9/11 as a National Day of Service and Remembrance, we encourage people to go out and do an act of kindness. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can be, buy a cup of coffee for somebody at Dunkin' Donuts in line with you, or, for kids, they can get up and make their bed for once in their lives and without their parents asking them to. Anything little, just do some random act of kindness or participate in a community service project. There are a number of them going on in Boston that day through the Mass Military Heroes Fund. From 11 o'clock on the Rose Kennedy Greenway near Faneuil Hall, we'll be doing a care package drive where we'll be putting together 1,000 care packages to send to the troops. And we encourage the public to come out. I realize it's a school day, it's a work day, but if they have an opportunity or if they're not committed to something else, to come out and help out with that project. It's a great project. And also there's the American Red Cross has a huge blood drive at Fenway Park and some satellite locations in the city. We encourage you to come out and give blood in honor of one of those who can't. So there's a lot of different ways that you can remember and honor September 11th, honor those who died, do an act of kindness in their memory.
That's right. And also locally, some kids, you might have an elderly neighbor next door, maybe mow the lawn or something.
Yeah, there's so many different things you can do that, bake cookies for somebody next door, or, as you said, take their trash out, or just, do anything kind that makes you feel good.
Right, and it helps the community out, and it's what Christy excels at, and a lot of other people in the town are so generous in their time. It's an opportunity, like I said, 5 minutes. You buy somebody a cup of coffee.
Absolutely.
It's a very simple thing to do, and I remember, as you do, I'm sure after 9/11, people actually were polite to each other and civil to each other, even on the roadways, and it's a random act of kindness.
Right, it really took a great tragedy to bring the country together in the way that it did, and even our government came together. They were nonpartisan for a short period of time, which was really nice. So we're just trying to bring that feeling back. And we're going to make it really easy for you to make 9/11 your National Day of Service and Remembrance with the road race on September 9th. We're incorporating some service into that, and it says right on our brochure, make this your National Day of Service opportunity. When you come to the road race, I don't want to say if, because we want everybody to come, on Sunday, September 9th, you can bring a can of food for the Abington Food Pantry, which is a great organization to help out Abington residents. And in return, you'll get a few raffle tickets for a special raffle. You can also bring your old cell phones that you've been waiting to get rid of. Robbie and Brittany Berquist from Cell Phones for Soldiers will be there collecting cell phones. And they've just started a branch of their organization, which is called Helping Heroes Home. And what they've done, it's a national organization, well supported by AT&T and some other corporations. They've collected old cell phones, they've turned them around into money and to reusable cell phones, and they send phone cards to service members serving overseas. And now Helping Heroes Home is going to be helping them once they are back in the country. Once they've left the service or whatever their situation is, they'll help them out in their needs here.
Try to acclimate them back.
Yes. Yep.
You might have seen John Marquardt was here 2 weeks or so ago, and he just got back from Afghanistan. He talked about that, and how we have to help a lot of these guys acclimate back in, because to go through the stress and the turmoil they've been in, they don't just come back home the next day and say, honey, I'm home.
And for those that are completing their service with the military, they don't necessarily come back to a job, and they have that to deal with. And so there's a lot that they go through. So what the kids from, they're now college kids, but what they've done is just really, really impressive. So we invited them to come to the road race have some information out about their organization and give people an opportunity to see what they do. And another way that, you know, the Jeff Coombs Foundation can reach out to other organizations and help people who attend the road race and help people in Abington reach out and find out ways that they can help and make 9/11 their National Day of Service and Remembrance.
The road race isn't just the road race, as we've discussed.
Right.
It's a family fun day.
It's really a great event. I mean, of course, I'm a little biased. I've been doing this this is our 11th year. It started off by Donna Cherry and a great committee just as a way to bring the community together. And over the last several years, we've turned it into a family day because we do have so many families that come and walk with their kids. And strangely now, we have more runners than we have walkers. Last year, we had about 800 runners and about 300 walkers, and we have more runners registered now too. But there's so much for people to do once they come to just stay back. There's music, there's entertainment, there's activities for the kids. The National Guard will be there with their pedal cars. The fire truck will be there for the kids, the police car to get their pictures taken, to climb in the car. So there's just so much going on. And of course, lots of free food. Many of the restaurants in town are going to be setting up and we'll be serving chowder and chili and hot dogs and pizza and all different kinds of things. And it's a way for you to be together. I know there's football that day, but it starts early. Registration begins at 7:30 in the morning. The walk run begins at 9. You can be out of there by 11 and on your way to the day's activities.
It starts at 9, is that the official sign?
The official walk run starts at 9. Registration starts at 7:30, so we do recommend getting there early because the earlier you get there, the better parking you get. You won't have to make use of the shuttle. And
you are able to use the shuttle, though. I've used it.
Yes, absolutely.
From the Knights of Columbus.
Yes, we'll have shuttles running from the Knights of Columbus to and from. We have over 100 raffle prizes, some great raffles. We have a grill from Lowe's. We'll have either our great big lobster or a couple of little lobsters from our local lobster provider, Lobster Barn. And so there's a lot of really neat raffle prizes that you'll be eligible to win if you buy the raffle tickets.
How are you set for volunteers for setting up and closing?
We encourage people to come down at 2 o'clock on Saturday at the Woodsdale School and help set up tents and everything. Clean up about 11 o'clock on Sunday. We encourage you to stick around and help clean up because that's always the biggest task, lugging a lot of water and taking down the tents and putting tables away and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can put yourselves to good work, and it's much appreciated. It's
a totally free event,
right,
with the exception of the raffle tickets.
And the registration.
And registration to run.
Right. And that gets you the great T-shirt that is so coveted around town. This year the color will be it's like a cantaloupe color. For the participants. It's really a nice color. So, and I know people love those shirts. We've seen them all over the country. We've seen them in Vegas. We've seen them in Florida. And so it's really cool when we see people wearing them.
I agree.
Yeah. And the Jeff Coombs Foundation, as you know, does a lot of work with families within the town. We support families across Massachusetts. It gives right back into the community. We do a lot for Abington. We do a lot for the schools. You see the foundation giving wherever there's need within our community and to families across Massachusetts. So your money is well spent.
I can attest to that. As you know, I've called many times to different families, and we're actually working on one now.
Right.
And it's a great way to contribute back into the community. National Day of Service and Remembrance, September 11th, and it is a school day, but Christy and other people will be available on the Greenway in Boston, right near the Rose Kennedy Greenway at the Funeral Hall. And September 9th is the road race.
Right.
And we're going to do the Christmas trees this year, do you know?
We are going to do the Christmas sale. We're looking for a location now, so if anybody knows of a big warehouse that we can use or a large empty store, let us know, because we are looking for a location. And we'll be doing that to support the holiday party we have for the military families in December. And so, yeah, there's.
Do you want to talk briefly about the military families?
Well, what we do in December is we host a party for the military families who are typically deployed through the holidays, also for the injured and the families of the fallen service members since 9/11 from Massachusetts. This year, because there are fewer troops deployed, we'll likely open it up to all families who had somebody deployed in 2012. Again, we are looking for a location for that because we've had it at Christina's the last several years, and Christina's is closed the last couple of months, so we are looking for a location, but we will definitely be having that party again. It's a totally free event, and it's our way of saying thank you to these families and the troops for their sacrifices, because they do really go through so much. And it's just a way to bring them together at the holidays. families who know what each other goes through.
Sure.
And that's, as a 9/11 family, I know how important it is to be with others who understand your plight.
Exactly.
And the military families are in that same boat, that they all have the same kind of needs and different from, you know, anyone else.
Right.
Right.
We have Dwight Nelson coming on a little later in the show, and he's going to be talking about something similar.
Yeah. One thing we're doing for the road race that I'd like to put out there is we will be honoring the military again. So if there are any military personnel that would like to be honored, please let us know. We'll have them up on the stage, and we will pay tribute to them. I know there are a few that have just returned from Afghanistan. Jenna Wells is returning as we speak. Not sure that she'll be in Abington by then. She's going to be returning to her home base, but you know, I know there are several others from Abington who have served, and I hope they'll come out and give us a chance to pay tribute to them. Yeah, and absolutely pay tribute to them and thank them for their service. We'll have Oladuni Oladipo from Canton, who will be singing the national anthem again. She's a 13-year-old girl who makes people cry when she sings. She's unbelievable. And she and her sister will be singing an original song called Song for America. That is a tribute to our country, and it's really very beautiful. So we'll be having some new things and some old things at the road race, and you know, just an opportunity to bring people together, pay tribute to our military, give people a chance to do something good, and have a lot of fun.
What's the website that people might contact you? What's the business?
They can contact me through the website, which is jeffcoombsfund.org. They can call me. I'm in the book, or my number is 781-982-1608. You know, they can pick up the green brochures at various locations around town.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Christy. I appreciate it, and I hope it's a success, and we'll be having you on afterwards.
All right, great.
See how it goes.
All right, we want to see everybody there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Around the Old Town, and with me today is Senator John Keenan. John, thanks for coming back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
John's been exceptionally busy this legislative year, and he's actually been very productive. The first thing I'd like to talk about, John, is the prescription monitoring program, which you were most influential in. Can you give us an update?
Sure. We had filed legislation after having several committee meetings and hearings to try to stem the tide of prescription painkillers. We've talked about it on previous shows. And so we came up with the legislation, and we had passed it in the Senate about 6 months ago, and it passed unanimously on a roll call vote. It then was in the House of Representatives for about 6 months. And so as the legislative session wound down, literally the session was closing at midnight. At about 11:57 p.m., the House acted on the legislation. They passed it, and pleased to report that the governor signed it last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a bill, I think, that will have an impact in the district that I represent, which is Quincy, Braintree, Abington, Rockland, and Holbrook. Unfortunately, in this district, as it is really statewide, there is a major problem, an epidemic with prescription painkillers. And this legislation tries to attack or limit the number of pills that are out there that are capable of being diverted, meaning taken from medicine chests, taken from kitchen cabinets, and used by people or sold by people illicitly. And we're trying to really limit the number of pills that are out there.
Right. And with some delay in the House is probably because there had to be some compromise on issues?
Right, there had to be. One of the things that we tried to do in the legislation was to not only get doctors enrolled in what they call the prescription monitoring program, which is a database that's been out there for several years. Every time you get a prescription filled, the information about that prescription is put into a statewide database. And doctors have had the opportunity to utilize that, but very few have. So this legislation, one, enrolls all the physicians, dentists, prescribers into the program so that they can then have access to this database. And we felt that once they were in, we also had to have a bit of a hook, meaning we had to have some way to make sure that they used the database once they were in. We had pushed for the idea that every time they prescribe a painkiller to a patient for the first time, that they would have to check the database. So if I was a patient for 10 years, but I was in a situation where I had pain and needed a painkiller, they would have to check the system at that point. The compromise ended up being that they would check the system for new patients. Okay. So it's not quite as much as we wanted, but it will be very effective. It will prevent people from going in and doctor shopping.
Exactly.
One week they go to an orthopedic, next week they go to a primary care physician, then they go to another orthopedic. What we have set up will prevent that from happening.
That's great, because as you said, doctors aren't doing it out of the maliciousness or out of, right. They don't know that this fellow has a history, because if they don't check the database, how could they know?
Right.
As far as they're concerned, it's a new patient with a new problem.
Exactly. So we think that'll be effective. We also have some educational components to the legislation that when you pick up a painkiller prescription, there'll be now an informational piece of literature that's provided that will tell you signs of dependency or addiction, what to do, who to call for help, how to dispose of the medicine properly, really a stock piece of information. We also have in there some programs that if somebody's brought to an emergency room, a minor is brought to the emergency room and has an overdose situation, the parents are notified. And again, once they're notified, that they're also told, here are the resources that are available to help the child. We have components of legislation that will educate people in the courthouses so that public defenders, district attorneys, clerks, probation officers, they'll all be better educated relative to this issue and know what resources are out there. We put together doctors, dentists, a whole group of specialists at the table, and we ask them through this legislation to come up with best practices. And those best practices will then become regulation. And those are just a few parts of the legislation. It's pretty comprehensive.
Pretty complicated, right, exactly, and comprehensive as well. And I know that's how you would operate, because you have to get the people who are going to be enforcing this to make it practical.
Exactly. Yeah, so we're hopeful it's going to make a difference. We spent a lot of time on it. There was a little bit of pushback. We got pushed back through the legislative process. It did come down to literally the last minute. Yeah. But you know, I thank my colleagues in the Senate. I thank my colleagues in the House of Representatives. I thank the governor for signing it. And I think everybody came to realize what a significant problem it is and how many people are affected, and that this is one step that we can take to try to solve the problem. As
you and I have discussed, it's eminent. It's throughout the state and probably throughout the country, but at least I know more of throughout the state. And as you said, it's not necessarily just from the doctors. It's people leaving their prescriptions at home in the medicine cabinet, kids going into their parents or their grandparents. And I know the Abington Police, I'm sure other departments do it, they have a day a year or something where you can dispose of your medicine.
Right, they have a drop-off day. I think Abington has a kiosk. I'd have to double check, but most of the police stations now have kiosks in the lobby where you can drop off your unused prescriptions. You know, I'd have to check on whether Abington has, but a lot of them are starting to do that, and it's a safe way to dispose of these drugs. It was that concept that actually triggered the legislation. I was at an event at a program where somebody said we should look at, instead of having one drug drop-off day a year, that we should have 3 or 4. And I thought that's great. Certainly it gives the people the ability to dispose of these prescriptions. But it also triggered a thought in my mind that if we need 4 of these days every year, and if you go to one of these days, you see the bag full of pills that are returned, that if we need 4, then we're prescribing too many pills that are going unused. You want to make sure people are adequately treated for pain and all of that. But if we're filling up bags of, you know, unused pills 4 times a year, then we're prescribing too many. And it's costing us. It's costing us through our insurance. It's costing us, you know, in so many different ways. And so it just seemed, let's try to limit the number of pills.
Right, makes sense. Well, congratulations, because I know you fought very hard for that.
Thank you.
We all thank you as well, because, as we said, there's not a family that's not affected by this.
I know, it's unfortunately.
Right. Well, that's good. That's a great positive way to start the program. Next, we talked about the Tricentennial, the Abington Tricentennial.
Yes, it was a great series of events that Abington's had. And at the legislature, we recognized how important that is to the town of Abington. So we tried to find a mechanism to help the town defray some of the costs. And we were successful in getting in the budget a $10,000 appropriation for the town of Abington to help to cover some of the costs associated with the Tricentennial. It's just been, as you know, just a great series of events. People have really come out. I went to the one down in where they all dressed up in colonial outfits, or going back 300 years. So just a whole host.
Parade Day.
Yeah, the parade day was a fantastic parade. Enjoyed that. So we were pleased to help out. It's an interesting process to try to get something like that in the budget.
Right, I bet.
Because there's so much opposition to earmarks. So we were able to get it in, not necessarily as an earmark, but as part of some other programs for celebrations in other towns. Ultimately, what I'd like to see the state do, rather than approach this on an individual basis, is to recognize or plan for the idea that every year somebody's going to have a bicentennial, a tricentennial, a 350th, whatever it may be, that we can set aside a pool of funds. It doesn't have to be all that large, but just something to help towns celebrate these events. And you hate to just spend, but it's really money that is well spent. It promotes civic pride. The effects of these celebrations are long-standing. It increases people's feeling about the towns, which is great for everything from property values to everything. So I think it's money well spent. It's
That's
really an
quality of
investment.
life. It improves your quality of life, your state of mind.
Absolutely. And if you feel good about the town, you're more likely to get involved in events, and it just has such a positive effect. And it has such a positive effect for relatively little money.
Exactly. For $10,000 in the scope of things, because they've spent significantly more and raised significantly more. And, but that helps. I mean, I'm not downplaying it. It's $10,000, $10,000 more than they had.
And from the state's perspective, there's people who come back for these events.
Yeah.
You know, people came back to Abington that grew up here, maybe
Sure.
moved to a nearby town or moved out of state. And they come back and they'll maybe go out to eat
I was just
and
going to
spend
say,
money
it
that way.
regenerates
Yeah,
the
exactly.
economy.
So it's money well spent.
I agree.
And we were
I
thrilled to be
appreciate you
able to do
helping
it.
to get in that too.
Thank you.
We had a last music concert was last night.
Oh, it's not yes, right.
The Infractions. Mrs. Reed was honored with all the work she's done for the Tricentennial Committee and the summer concerts.
Yeah.
And,
It's a great
but you
program.
mentioned the other towns, because I think I was talking to Jim Pearl, I think Holbrook or Avon or something, they're going to be doing 125th.
Yeah.
So they called here to get some advice on what they could be doing. So like you said, every year you're going to have numbers of towns celebrating 125th, 150th.
Right. Yeah,
So like you said, if you nip that in the bud and prepare for it, you can maybe get some money to.
Right, and that doesn't have to be. Then it doesn't have to be an earmark process
No.
or anything like that. It's a recognized budget item, and it's recognized as an investment in the community and an investment in the Commonwealth.
Exactly, because you are right. I do know people that came back from out of town and they went out to dinner. They,
Right.
they went to the Dunkin' Donuts, et cetera.
Yes.
So it does. It generates the economy a bit too. So
Yeah.
for a little investment. What else is news up the State House?
A whole host of things. Well, our formal sessions have ended. We wrapped up the formal sessions at the end of July, and now we're in what they call an informal session, meaning non-controversial items are acted upon in informal sessions. We still have some committee work that goes on. But it was a very busy legislative session. Some legislation that attracted a bit of attention was Melissa's bill,
Yes.
which was the habitual offender law, meaning that if you a three-time offender, a violent offender, that you will no longer be eligible for parole. There was some confusion out there as far as whether this was like the California 3 strikes law, meaning 3 strikes and you get life imprisonment. That's not the case. This law was that if you have committed 3 violent offenses, and there's a list of them,
very specific.
then on the 3rd one you will not be eligible for parole, is basically what it says. And to me, that's just common sense, that if somebody has committed a violent crime, committed another violent crime, and then commits a 3rd violent crime, you've hopefully tried to rehabilitate that person. The 3rd time, there's some recognition that it's just not going to work. We're not saying that it may necessarily be life imprisonment,
Right.
but you're just not going to get out early.
Right.
So that was a big bill. We were pretty active on that because I had some concerns, because in the process of the bill, we toughened up things for 3rd-time violent offenders, but there was a lessening on the sentences of some of the drug laws.
Okay.
And I was not in favor of that. I attempted on the Senate floor through amendments to make sure that we kept strict drug sentencing laws in place. Unfortunately, they were lessened.
Okay.
And hopefully we don't pay the price for that down the road.
Sure.
All for somebody in a first-time offense getting rehabilitation, getting them into a recovery program. It's good for the person, it's good for the family, it's cost-effective. But if somebody is dealing major quantities of narcotics and they get caught a 3rd time, I think there should be a
They've had their
substantial
chance.
sentence.
Exactly.
You're all for helping somebody out,
Right.
but
I actually had to testify, I was called to testify a number of times in federal court because the feds have a 3-strike type of rule. And I'm a fingerprint expert, and I had to verify that the fellow who was with us at trial was the fellow who was arrested and convicted at this crime, then the 2nd crime, and 3rd crime. So I had to compare the fingerprints for each event, as well as the fellow there right now, to make sure we're not sending the wrong guy.
Right.
Because as you know, many felons have the same names and same dates of birth. But so the feds have been doing something similar for years.
yeah, it's interesting. There was a little bit of a disconnect between what happens at the federal level and the state level. There was a loophole under our prior statute that if somebody was convicted at the federal level, those sentences didn't count at the local level, at the state level, towards the 3
strikes, right, the 3rd crime, yes.
So that loophole has been closed with this
Good.
legislation. So if somebody has 2 violent federal crimes on their record and then commit a
state
state
crime.
violent crime, that will count as a 3rd.
I'm glad somebody picked up on that, because
so
that
that's-
could have been an issue down the road.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's a good bill.
Great.
Yeah, so that kept us busy.
Sure.
It was a good legislative session. As you know, we also had payment reform, which was a substantial piece of legislation. Massachusetts did, they like to call it Romney Care or whatever it may be.
Right.
They have universal coverage, and they extended it to the number of people being covered, and it has worked very well. but it really didn't do much to keep the cost of health care down.
Sure.
So it was the recognition, first step, get everybody covered, disperse the cost more evenly, and then try to control those costs overall. And in an effort to control those costs, the legislature in the past and the government assigned payment reform legislation, which will change the model, really, on how health care is delivered and paid for. It has historically been a fee-for-service basis. You go in, you need an x-ray, you pay for the x-ray. Your insurance company pays for it, you pay the deductible, whatever it may be. You pay as you go.
Right.
This, the idea behind this, although it's not mandated, the hope is that it will lead healthcare providers to paying more holistically for health care, that there'll be perhaps a global payment for my care, that my primary care physician and the organization that the physician belongs to will receive an annual payment, and that they'll have to manage that payment and manage my care in conjunction with each other.
Okay,
so there'll be more emphasis on wellness, that when I go to see the doctor, if I'm a smoker, there'll be more of an effort to get me to stop smoking.
Sure.
Things like that. And the idea will be, rather than fee for service, we'll pay globally and bring the cost down. Doesn't mandate it, but that's hopefully where it will go. And one of the key components of the legislation was to limit overall health care spending to basically gross state product, which is the rate of growth in the economy, that what we spend on health care cannot really exceed that.
Sure. If we're only growing at 2%, we don't want health care to go up 8%.
Exactly. It's a quick and easy way to explain it. If the economy is growing at 2%, the effort will be to try to keep it as close to 2% as possible.
My question, what you mentioned, was maybe like an overall, say they might appropriate $100,000 for your health care. What if, some people, as we know, have cancer, et cetera, and their bills are obviously going to be higher than that.
This, it's contemplated that will happen, and that there'll be accommodations within the system for that. Because if we're spending this much and meeting as much of the needs as we possibly can, as you move it and you try to cap it, money that might be spent unnecessarily for me
sure.
will become available and will be, there for people who have chronic
right.
illnesses. Diabetes is one. Cancer is, a terrible disease that requires a lot of funding and a lot of care. A lot of
testing, right.
All that. So all that will be accounted for within the system. Catastrophic illnesses, so to speak,
sure.
were certainly outside the exception of that, what would be a global payment. But again, there was an effort to perhaps mandate that. That's not the route the state chose. It's more of a push to different ways of funding our healthcare system.
Well, as you said, that's a lot of money that we're spending. So if we can try to rein it in and still be effective and compassionate, then let's work on that.
Right, absolutely. So we're hopeful that will have an impact. So pretty busy legislative session. Those are just a couple of the highlights.
What do you expect to come up the next year? Anything? The gambling casinos, I assume?
The casinos passed. That was another piece of legislation that passed. So I think over the course of next year, we're going to see a lot of moving and shaking relative to how that ultimately works. There's been a presentation out in Springfield for casinos. Suffolk Downs is the issue on the South Coast with the tribe trying to get recognition and get a casino down there. That will continue to evolve. One of the big things I think that will come up at the start of the next legislative session, and even in advance of that, is how do we address the issue of transportation needs in the Commonwealth. We recognize that the MBTA needed some supplemental funds this year. There's not a public transit agency in the world that operates on a profit basis,
right.
So you need a subsidy. But we can't keep having those. We have to find a better way to fund our transportation, and it's a really an interesting issue because the MBTA is basically Greater Boston area,
right.
And so every time you use taxpayer dollars to fund it, you get representatives from South Coast, from the western part of the state and northwestern part of the state saying, you're using our tax dollars to pay for a system that we don't benefit from.
Exactly.
And so there's a recognition that we'll have to pay attention to the regional transit authorities,
right.
that we'll have to pay attention to the MBTA, that we'll have to look at our roads and bridges and try to come up with a way to meet the financial needs of our transportation system as a whole, including ferries and things of that nature. I think that will be one of the biggest issues that we face when we return in January.
Makes sense, because it is. I remember in the years past, the MBTA would run for the year, then we'd fund them.
Right, they switched it right.
Right, at least now
you ran it, and then you gave a bill.
Here's what you owe us for running it.
Which
right.
That's how my kids think it operates, rather than put them on a budget.
Right.
So it switched over to forward funding several years ago, and when they did that, they made some assumptions as to what the cost would be, and those assumptions didn't hold true.
Right.
And so as a result, of that and a whole lot of other different things. The MBTA, for instance, is running in a deficit, a substantial deficit, and we've got to take a good look at that to come up with a solid funding mechanism.
Yeah, but as you know, it's necessary. I mean, a lot of people can't park in Boston to begin with, so we need it to function and to keep the economy going.
We do. And one of the things I'd like to see the state look at is when a large development goes in Boston, for instance, there's a 600-foot tower plan for downtown Crossing where Filene's used to be. And that will go up, and they won't have to spend as much money on underground parking there because it will be above a train station. Right. People will want to live there because they can get on the green line, red line, blue line, go wherever they want to go for work and for enjoyment. So there won't be as much of a need for underground parking, which is very expensive. That developer will approach the city for permits, the city of Boston, and the city of Boston will extract some mitigation from that developer for the benefit of Boston, which is great, because there'll be burdens to Boston as well. But to the extent that the developer and the city of Boston benefit by way of the development, they do so because it is a public transportation area. And there should be some recognition that they should play a role in funding the public transportation that makes that project all that much more viable. Right. In Quincy, with our redevelopment, we're looking at that. The MBTA garage in Quincy was just closed. And rather than say to the MBTA, go ahead, you have to fix it, the city is at the table with the MBTA, and we've met with them both and trying to say, let's get some private development involved here. That if private development can use some of this space, build a private development, the T can benefit from that. Right. They can work with the T to build a much lower cost garage and transportation station there. So private dollars can leverage state dollars, and we can get a good project without overly burdening the taxpayers.
Right. And everyone's benefits. So it's
everybody benefits.
Right, exactly.
And there's a willingness to do that, and hopefully the Quincy Center garage situation will become a model across the Commonwealth of how we can fund our transportation with private dollars and public partnership. They're doing a program like that over in Somerville. I think it can work.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Any other legislation that seems to be coming up?
No, just it's always something. We've got a whole host of things that we're still working on, some local bills. We've worked consistently throughout the session with the officials in the town of Abington relative to some of the town meeting issues that had to be clarified at the state level. Whenever there's a local vote, sometimes you have to have legislation that basically certifies that local vote. Exactly, home rule. We were involved in the Cape Cod Lumber, which I think was a great program for Abington, local jobs, keeping the money local. We were able to testify at a meeting at the state level to help with that project. So there's always something going on. Yeah. And
that was on the sewer commission when we had to discuss that.
Yeah. So it's Abington's a great town. They're always busy. There's always something going on. So we're there to help. And
well, you have been there to help, and that's important.
It's great. It's a great relationship, and I'm thrilled that during the redistricting process, my district didn't change relative to this part of the district because Abington's just been such a great town to represent, and I look forward to doing it again.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and thank you for all you've done this legislative year, and we look forward to seeing you again. Maybe after January, so we'll see what the summer holds. Maybe some new event will come up. We'll have you on again.
Great, thank you.
You're always welcome. No. John, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time, and we'll have a next guest coming up. Will be the Lions Club or one of the veterans groups. So bear with us. We'll be right with you.
Oh, that's what. Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Around the Old Town. I'm Bob Toomey. With me is obviously my wife calling me. We'll have to shut this off. With me is Dwight Nelson, president of New England Warrior. Dwight, thanks for coming on, sir.
Thank you very much. It's glad to be here.
I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Dwight is obviously, as I said, New England Warrior. Please tell us what New England Warrior does.
Well, we support military members and veterans, and we were formed shortly after 9/11. My son was in the Marine Corps, a Marine Corps sniper, did a couple tours since 9/11 to overseas, and lost a few guys. A few of his buddies were wounded. So I felt I needed to do something to support our troops and our veterans. So I formed New England Warrior. We're a nonprofit organization, and we do a couple things.
What do you do?
One thing we do is, this will be our 4th year in a row, we've partnered with Wreaths Across America, and we're a location leader for the 2 cemeteries in Holbrook, Union and Wendell cemeteries, total of about 600 veterans' graves. And then we've also become the location leader for the 3 veteran sections at Melrose Cemetery in Brockton, where my father grew up, my wife grew up. So we adopted Melrose Cemetery for the veteran sections, which is about 900 graves. So we try to raise, we go out during the year, those location leaders that support New England Warrior. And you have fundraisers to raise funds to purchase wreaths. They're $10 a wreath. And we try to raise the funds to decorate those 1,500 veterans' graves, and this will be our 4th year.
Great. I believe your son served with John DeMarco from Abington.
He did. Yes, he did.
Yeah, he's an Abington resident, one of my neighbors.
Yeah.
And that's how I got to meet you and your son.
Right,
Was it Dave?
right. Yeah. And then another thing we're trying to do is we have an ongoing fundraising effort underway called Operation Patriot Warrior. We're trying to raise about $20,000 to purchase a military Humvee, and would like to get that and then customize it, fix it all up, and then raffle it off with, it looks like we'll be able, once we get it, with Barrett Jackson Auto Auctions in Phoenix, and we'll auction that Humvee off, and we're going to give the money to the Wounded Warrior Project and the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation in memory of those Marines and Navy corpsmen who have made the ultimate sacrifice to help educate their children, and then to the Wounded Warrior Project with all they do to support wounded servicemen.
Is that the national organization, I assume?
That's the national organization, right. So the wreaths, supporting Wounded Warrior, supporting the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation, and so we got quite a bit going on.
I understand you have an event locally coming up.
We do. My son and some of his veteran buddies, they have a motorcycle group, patriotic motorcycle group, the American Infidels, and they're holding a fundraiser Saturday, September 15th at the Whitman VFW, starting at noontime, going till midnight. They're going to have bands. They're going to roast, I believe they have 3 pigs. So just a good time to raise some money. And the money we raise from that fundraiser on the 15th of September will go to support 2 wounded Marines that were wounded in Afghanistan in 2011. So,
are they relatively local?
No, one's they're out of state. I've been told to kind of keep names because of the because of what they do as snipers. Try to keep it low key. Right. But come out September 15th and you'll get the full story.
What is the cost, or what's the donation? Or
there is no cost, and we just ask you to make a donation, and there's going to be lots of raffle prizes. Just a good time supporting 2 wounded Marines.
Great. For raffles, I assume that you can buy raffles. I assume
right, you can buy raffles
at
the event. We'll be selling tickets. I know one of them is going to be a widescreen TV, and just a good patriotic. The music, I think, might be geared to the younger generation, but it's going to be a good time. And another thing, the Infidels, American Infidels motorcycle group does that supports our military and our veterans is they hold a headstone run every year. And this past year was our 4th year. We had it, I think it was in June, and we raised a lot of money. And the name Headstone Run, that goes to support my efforts with Wreaths Across America, decorating veterans' graves.
Great.
So that's a real good time. We really encourage the young kids to come out, and it's just a real good time laying the wreaths on the veterans' graves.
Well, it shows some respect that a lot of times we tend to forget.
Yeah, it just just a little bit of a way to say thank you for what they've done.
Sure.
And so it's like 1,500 graves, as I said, 600 in Holbrook and 900 in Brockton. So 1,500, $10 a wreath. That's $15,000. So we got a ways to go, but we're getting there. We're going to have a concert in November 24th at the St. Joseph School, and Dan Clark, the singing trooper,
right.
He's going to perform, and that's going to go towards the wreaths to decorate veterans' graves as well.
That's fantastic.
So,
is there a website?
There is, yeah. It's New England Warrior, all one word, newenglandwarrior.org.
And is there a telephone number or anything else?
There is a telephone number, and I think you might see it on the screen, but it's 781-308-1052.
And that's how I get hold of you or your group?
Correct,
okay.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you for all you've done for the veterans.
Oh, thank you, and we thank everybody out there who helps out, and your former guest that you had on, Christy Coombs. She gave us a donation a few years ago. So it's, you know, we're not that big, and we like to work with other nonprofits, and, you know, we think we'll get a bigger bang for the buck if we all pull together.
You're right.
You know?
The pool is so limited now because of the economy.
Well, it is.
And if you can work together with other groups, that's what we're finding as well. You can kind of do joint fundraisers. And
exactly,
you're not hitting the same people all the time.
That's a big, you know, a big thing. You know, we would have liked to see this Operation Patriot Warrior getting the Humvee and restoring that, and then raffling it, and then therefore supporting the Wounded Warrior Project and the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation, but we just haven't been able to do that yet.
Right.
You know, I mean, but we'll get it done. We're gonna persevere and hang in there, and you know, keep on going. So
well, if your enthusiasm and the attitude last, then I'm sure you'll be accomplishing that goal very quickly.
Yeah.
Again, want to put that website up, please, one more time? The Wounded Warrior, if it's available. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
But we appreciate everybody's help. And, you know, if you can come out September 15th to the Whitman VFW at noontime, we'd love to have you. It goes to a great cause. And, you know, I think you'd have a good time.
There'll be a suggested donation, you know, what you can afford, and you can buy raffle tickets. And as we said, it's for a great cause. Anytime we can help our soldiers, we have to do it.
And Marines.
In Marines. Oh, I can
there
say
you
soldiers.
Go.
Marines on soldiers?
Marines is okay, yeah.
Mr. Nelson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
And
thank
I think
you.
you'll get some support. Abington's great at supporting the troops. And
sounds good. I really appreciate it.
Our next guest will be Wayne Smith, president of the Lions. And give us a minute. We'll be right back.
Cool.
Welcome back to Around the Old Town. With me now is Wayne Smith, president of the Abington Lions. Wayne, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Bob.
I appreciate it. Well, the Lions Club do so much. We want to inform some of the people what's going on and some events that are coming up.
Right. Well, we have the carnival coming up. That's the first thing that's going to happen. And that's over here at the South Shore Terminal, almost across the street from where we are, and right across from the pool place and the Abington Town line with Weymouth on Route 18.
Great.
And that'll be held from October 13th.
September, right?
You know, you're right.
Yes.
I'm glad you're here because, I mean, September 13th to 16th. We were talking two functions when
exactly. That Ted Cummins does it to us all
he'll
the
do
time.
It to me
he
all
probably
the time.
wrote down the October 13th.
I don't think he did. No, I'll tell you, he is one great member.
He is.
And,
but September 13th.
September 13th to 16th. And as I say, right on Route 18. And it'll be a fun time, and also there'll be a lot of coupons around it, many of the merchants in Abington, so that you can get discounts.
Discount price. Great.
And so that, just walk into most of the stores, they'll have them, and they'll be glad to give them to you.
So, now we had this last year, right? The Lions
yes,
Club put this
last year was the first year. We had a real hot spell, so this time we're going to be a little bit better off.
But I thought it was well attended. I know when I went by there, it was very well attended.
Yes, yes. And it raises some funds for Abington. We work like the Dickens to raise a few dollars, and then we give it all away.
Right, but for the right causes.
That's our policy.
Right, you give it away to causes, not to yourself.
That's true. That's correct.
So it's September 13th, 14th, and 15th?
Yes.
Okay. And is there an admission price? I know you're going to have discounted coupons, but basically, how does the funding work in this sense?
You know, I can't really tell you exactly on that, but I probably just charge you mostly for the rides you get in there, and then that's,
if I remember correctly, you had to get tickets.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
so
right.
you pay for what you get.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Right. And then, as I say, you have the coupons and so
forth.
forth.
Right. They give you a discount
Make
price.
sure you get those. And if you can't find it at a store or something, get a hold of a Lion, and they'll tell you what stores will have it. So that'll be all over town.
I'll give Ted Cummins' personal number out at the end of the show.
Oh yeah. In fact, I've given that to him already, so it's going to be up on the screen.
Okay,
I'm sure.
great. He deserves it.
Yeah.
Okay, so September 13th, 14th, and 15th, right here on Route 18 at the terminal.
South Shore Terminal.
South Shore Terminal.
Yeah, for us older people, it was Old Andrews and Pierce, for many years, yeah.
And then what are the hours on that, noontime? 5 o'clock?
Noontime until 10 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday, and then it'll be a little different hours during the week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it'll be a nice time.
I know that about it. I know the kids had a blast last year.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's a great cause, as you said.
I always enjoy you when you come up to the hot dog stand, because bring the whole gang with me.
Oh, yes. We help support the Lions for the Yield Project. We buy about 20 hot dogs at a whack. And
I know it. Oh, yeah, you're fantastic. Yeah. And
okay.
Then we got the Scary Woods coming up, which is, last year was the first year. Also talk about 2 programs we just had for 1 year. And it really turned out great. I never heard so many people come up to us afterwards and say, "You've got to do this next year." It was fun. It was at Island Grove, and this year it's going to be on Saturday, October 20th, from 3 to 8. We hope we'll have a nice frost, so we don't have to worry about any mosquitoes.
Right.
And hopefully that'll happen before that time comes, and we'll be all set. And we have a lot of people, and as we talked about earlier, Ted sets me up for this, and I will not forget someone, so I've got it all on the list.
Please write it down, right?
But we're looking for more people that would be interested in being there. Everything is free, with one exception. The Lions Clubs will sell hot dogs and soda and water. Other than that, everything else is free, and we have a lot of sponsors. Excuse me. The Abington Family Dental last year gave away toothbrushes to every child that came through. After the candy and everything else, they can use that, right?
Right.
And the Friends of Island Grove, who work very hard to keep the Grove the way it is. The Park and Recreation Department in Abington. And in fact, we may try to do something for Mark Shirokas, who is in need of some funds, and we may do something aside for that, and we're working on that with the Park and Recreation Committee. Abington Police Department, they supply a motorcycle and a car with the lights, and the young people get a chance to get in them and talk to. Last year it was Barry, and I mean he's just
he's
fantastic,
great with the group. Yes.
Unbelievable. And then the fire department has some giveaways, and they're very active. The Abington Library will read stories around a campfire, so the young people just really enjoy that. And Timber Lanes will have some coupons and things. Elliott Tree, same type of thing.
Nate Elliott. Yeah.
Nate Elliott, yeah, and Siones. Padula Tractor supplies the tractor that we have a hay ride in, and the wagon is supplied by W. Lee Mann, and we also have the hay that comes in from the Nazarella Farm. So it'll be a real old-fashioned hay ride. Doesn't cost a nickel. Just come and have a great time. And if you want to ride it more than once, there's no one saying you can't.
Get back in line.
That's right. And then South Shore Pottery is going to do some face painting and things like that with the young people. So it's just a wonderful time, and it's a real family affair, and plenty of people around, and security, and it's just a nice little place.
Like you said, it's not too scary woods, and
that's
correct. It's age appropriate.
Yes, we're not. We'll be doing Barrett's, and the Lions Club have a night there, and we'll be. But that's a altogether different ball game. It's I don't
want to frighten you off. It is appropriate for young children.
Absolutely.
Right. They'll make sure that they're not too frightened. It's a great show, and you're right, because you had 2 new events that started last year, and they both kicked off like thunder. I mean,
yes.
And I'm glad you're able to keep it up, and you can use some help, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Always can use some help, and always can use some new members. We're the world's largest service organization, and with over 1,300,000 members. But we need all the help we can get in Abington. Sometimes it's just for a project, but many times we meet the first and third Wednesday of the month at the Depot Restaurant,
And if anyone would like to join the Lions, just give me a call or Ted Cummings. And
I believe we have numbers, Wayne. I think that
yes,
you
they are.
provided. Maybe we could put some numbers up.
Yeah.
Our website. I think they'll pop up soon.
Yeah, they'll pop up. I'm sure he'll.
My producer's very
Edmund will
sharp.
do a great
Exactly.
job. I can tell you that much.
He's very sharp.
And if we do something wrong, we'll hear about it too, won't we?
There we are. There it is.
So we're always looking for members and always looking for help, and we do a lot of things. Probably the main thing that we do is Helen Keller came and spoke to us back in before our time,
right.
1925, and asked us to become a Knights of the Blind, and which we did. And Boston, believe it or not, because of the Lions in Massachusetts alone, is the ~1 eye care center in the world.
Wow.
And there are researchers come all over from the world to study in Boston, and we contribute about $1 million a year just in Lions in Massachusetts for eye research, and take care of a lot of people. And even macular degeneration, which up until the late 90s, there was nothing they could do for it. And now for the wet age-related macular degeneration, there's shots that they can give in the eye. Sounds really bad, but they sensitize it at first, and many people are getting some of their sight back, and it's made a difference. So,
no doubt about it.
Yeah. And the trouble with research is it takes so many years from the day you put the $1 in.
Right.
And we supply the initial funding that they can't get any money from the National Institute of Health or the pharmaceutical companies. But once we get that initial research done, then they can go. In fact, for wounded warriors and things, which is quite interesting to me, is one of the biggest injuries they have is with the blast, and they lose their sight.
Right.
And at Scapins, and we did the initial funding, the Department of the Army has given them $20 million to do further research because we show that we can save their sight. And it's unbelievable. That's just one thing.
Right. By you providing the seed money to do the initial research,
right,
they're able to show enough evidence that they can get the government or whatever to
yes,
contribute significantly more.
Yeah.
Well, that's so important. And like you said, for soldiers, there's not enough we can do for them.
Oh, I know it. Absolutely. And it's just, it helps, not just in Massachusetts, sometimes our own families. We even have a Lion in our club that's now getting the shot in the eye. And
wow,
many of us join Lions not because, necessarily for eyes, but it all of a sudden, it's amazing how many times it touches a family.
right. It's a fraternal organization, but as you said, it's one of the biggest donors and service-oriented associations in the country
Right.
of the world. So,
yes, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure your members do it because they can give back, and it's.
Right.
And that's one of the main things. That's, again, as we've said 100 times, Abington is great. Lions are nationwide, international, I
Right,
assume.
yes.
But there are many people in Abington that want to give back, and they have different routes to go. And if you have the time, please consider helping out Wayne and the Abington Lions Club. We'll go through this again. The carnival is September 13th, 14th, and 15th.
I'm glad you remember the month.
And the Not So Scary Woods, I believe, is October 6th.
October, I think that's October... got it down here somewhere. How about October 20th?
How about the 20th of October? See, that's why he writes it down. 20th of October, and so please, we'll have you on or somebody come on before the October 20th event.
Sure, fine.
But we want to make sure we got the carnival information out there first.
Yes.
And again, the Lions Club does an awful lot in the community, so if you can help them out, please do. There are so many things that Wayne and the Lions Club do. We don't have time to go into it now.
Fine.
But if you can concentrate on this for the next couple of weeks, we'll provide more information at a later date, and we'll keep you updated. Well, that's it for today's show. Wayne, thank you very much for coming on. I
really
appreciate it.
Thank you.
You guys do an awful lot for our community. We have tomorrow is the start of the school year. It's this show was taped August 27th. So be prepared. Kids are going to be walking out in the streets to and from school, so please drive safely. In the future, we'll have some people on from the Hug Foundation, from the Abington School System. We'll try to keep you abreast of what's going on. Again, Mr. Smith, thank you very much for coming on, and we'll talk to the Abington public at a later date. Thank you. And I want to thank Edmund Toomey for producing the show, and Aaron Christensen, the mayor of Abington, is learning the ropes here today. Justin Shanahan and Edmund are teaching them. So we want to keep everybody involved and keep the show going for the future generations. If we incorporate the young kids in now, hopefully we'll keep it going.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.